What does Halloween sound like? If someone asked you that question, what would come to mind? What would you tell them? Is it to hear the crackle of fallen leaves beneath your feet? Is it the distant laughter of children somewhere beyond the trees getting, excited about the holiday? Is it a screen door creaking open only to close again behind another costumed visitor? Is it the screams of sometimes fear, sometimes delight when you visit a haunted house? Maybe you hear a church bell in the distance, a lone owl, the wind moving beneath bare branches, or maybe you hear music, and not just any music, but Halloween music. Like we've said before, every holiday has a soundtrack. Christmas has hundreds of songs that announce its arrival before a single decoration is even unpacked. The 4th of July has the patriotic marches, fireworks, all the things associated with that holiday. And New Year's Eve has songs of celebration. It's a new year. It's a new change. Everything, can start over again. Well, Halloween is different. Halloween was not built by one composer or artist, and it wasn't created in one decade. It grew piece by piece, record by record, generation by generation. Novelty songs, movie scores, television themes, garage bands, rockabilly, psychobilly, jazz, surf music, dark wave, post-punk, pretty much any type of music you can think of, we can find a Halloween song for, right? And each generation has added another page and another song to this rich Halloween music history. Some songs are popular, some songs quietly disappear. Every so often, though, a song escapes its own time frame and becomes iconic. It becomes larger than the artists who created it. It becomes part of October itself. And on this episode, we're opening up one of those records, pulling it off the shelf, getting ready to throw it on the turntable. This was not a song written for a haunted attraction. It was not commissioned for a horror film. It was not intended to become a seasonal anthem, as far as I know. Yet somehow, 40 years later, more than 40 years, this has become one of the songs that countless Halloween lovers instinctively return to when autumn arrives. And I'm one of those people, not just because of the song title, but because it's a super awesome song and a very, very, very good album. Pay attention. We're going to open Archive Spotlight number 3. I welcome you back. I am Gregory Hallows, and this is Preserve Halloween Podcast. Thank you once again for joining me inside the Preserve Halloween Archive. We've been building it up for years, right? Around me sits hundreds, if not thousands, of objects, old paper decorations, vintage masks, photographs, advertisement, costumes, postcards, candy boxes, can't talk today, records. Some are famous, some are things that I just absolutely love. Some things may have disappeared from your memory, but each one of these things tells part of Halloween's story. Some would call me a hoarder. I call myself a collector. On this episode, we're going to pull off a record from the shelf. I own this record. It is part of my collection. Not because it sold millions of copies, not because it topped the charts, but because somewhere along the way, Halloween quietly claimed it as one of its own. Of course, the song is called Halloween. The artist is Siouxsie and the Banshees, but that's not the end of the story, right? We know, I've talked about this a lot. Just because a song has something in the title that sounds like it should be a Halloween song doesn't mean it is. So before we lower the needle onto this record, before we hear the first note, there's a story you should know. Songs don't become traditions by accident. They earn their place, sometimes over decades, sometimes without anyone noticing. Until October, you might hear it again and realize it's always been there, just waiting for you to discover it. So we talked about this before. I do repeat myself a lot in podcasts because the premise really doesn't change. A lot of this information's not any different. We know there was a time when Halloween barely existed in popular music. The holiday existed, community celebrated, children trick-or-treated, families decorated. But unlike Christmas, there were very few musicians writing songs specifically for Halloween. The music from this holiday usually came from somewhere else. Classical compositions, spooky sound effects, old folk songs, movie scores, television themes, things that we attributed to the holiday for us. By the late 50s and 60s, novelty records began filling that void. We had monsters dancing, ghosts singing, skeletons jitterbugging. That's a sight to see, right? Witches were laughing. Songs like these became woven into our childhood memories. And not because they were frightening, per se, but because they were fun. Halloween was playful, safe, colorful. But something was changing beneath the surface as horror films became more sophisticated and were being shown on television a lot more. Audiences embraced darker stories. Halloween itself slowly began maturing. The children who once danced to these novelty records were getting older, and Halloween changed with them. They still love jack-o'-lanterns, still carve pumpkins, still decorate their homes, but now they love haunted houses. They love classic horror movies, Universal, Hammer horror, midnight movies, Vincent Price, Edgar Allan Poe. The holiday itself was growing up, and the soundtrack would have to grow with it, right? So by the late 70s, Halloween was waiting for a different kind of music, not about monsters. They wanted something that would feel like you're walking through October. And the right band, I guess, was just waiting to arrive. And in London, 1976, that band did arrive. And to understand why Halloween became one of the songs of the season, we have to leave October. I know we don't want to, but we got to leave October for a second. Let's travel to London in the late 70s, a city that existed simply in shades of gray. Factories were closing, unemployment was climbing, entire neighborhoods felt tired, and young people looked around and wondered what comes next. And out of that uncertainty, punk music exploded. It wasn't polished, it wasn't technically perfect, it wasn't supposed to be. Punk was a declaration and a refusal to accept the world as it was. It burned bright and it burned quickly. And by the end of the decade, something interesting began happening. Many of the musicians who helped ignite punk started asking different questions. So, we've torn everything down. Now what do we do? What are we building? And some bands leaned into electronic music. Some bands became more experimental. Others began exploring atmosphere instead of speed, texture instead of volume, mystery instead of outrage. And many music critics would call this movement post-punk. And of course, when these things are being invented, no one really knows it at the time. No one knows they're creating a new genre. They're just playing music, right? They were simply following their curiosity and their natural artistic, instincts. So among these artists, there was one band that kind of stood apart. And this band was Siouxsie and the Banshees. And their story was almost an accident. Siouxsie Sioux and Stephen Severin were part of London's original punk scene, but from the beginning, they seemed interested in different ideas than many of the other people they, kind of hanging around. And rather than remain within punk's boundaries, which were very established, they continued to experiment with mood and rhythm and imagery, and they would help shape what would become post-punk. And they would influence the emerging goth movement. So listen to the early recordings of the band. They're restless. They're always searching for something. And they never seemed satisfied repeating what they had already done that worked. Every album became another experiment, another step into unfamiliar territory. And that's why they've remained so influential. So think about the Beatles. How many different genre changes did they do? And they're considered the greatest band ever by most people, or some people. I don't know. You might not like the Beatles, but you have to admit they were influential. But they changed genres constantly. So the Siouxsie and the Banshees were not trying to fit into a genre. They were helping invent one. Darkness without despair. And that's the thing that has followed goth music for a long time. People just assume they're sad all the time, right? Or hopeless or full of despair. And, sometimes they are, just like any human. But if you listen to enough of that music, you discover that they're not obsessed with darkness. They're fascinated by the beauty that exists inside of darkness. That's a very, very akin to Halloween, right? Halloween is not about celebrating evil. It's about acknowledging mystery and inviting us to spend one evening or many, come on, let's be honest, exploring things we usually keep hidden. Ghosts, memories, old houses, forgotten cemeteries, and the season itself. So think about your favorite Halloween decoration. Are they scary? Maybe not. They're probably nostalgic. It's like an old weathered jack-o'-lantern, an antique paper skeleton, an old postcard from the 1910s, an old Beazle cat with its folded paper honeycomb tail. Like, these aren't frightening objects. They're awesome and they're beautiful, and they are endearing to us because time has weathered them, but they still exist. And this is true of goth music. It finds elegance in forgotten places, beauty in abandoned buildings, comfort in moonlight, meaning in old stories. And that's why so many Halloween enthusiasts discovered this music and love it. It wasn't fashionable. It already felt familiar emotionally. So let's get to Siouxsie Sioux. A lot has been written about her. Unmistakable voice, dramatic stage presence. Everyone knows the makeup, the clothing, her confidence. But just like anyone, if you reduce her influence to just her appearance, you're completely missing the point. She projected complete artistic certainty. She walked on stage looking like someone who knew exactly who she was. And for young audiences in the late 70s, and maybe more so for women, I'm not a woman, so I can't speak on that, but maybe that was revolutionary. Her performance combined strength with mystery, control with unpredictability. She wasn't a traditional rock singer. She inhabited the songs. And even now, listen to Halloween, Siouxsie and the Banshees, and imagine anyone else singing it. Because one of my other favorite songs is, of course, Misfits. But if I'm being honest, I like the AFI version better. So I can't imagine another band singing Siouxsie and the Banshees Halloween and I liking it better. So, got to keep that in mind. Her voice carried something unusual. She was calm, but also distant. Quiet confidence. Never feels theatrical, really. And when she sings, it doesn't feel like she's just telling you a story. She feels like she's inviting you inside a story. So by 1981, the band had settled into what many fans regard as the classic lineup. So there's Siouxsie Sioux, Steven Severin, John Magooch, or Magoach, I don't know how you say it, Budgie, sometimes. And the thing is, sometimes, I said sometimes too fast, not Budgie sometimes, Budgie, and then sometimes was the next word, so sorry. Sometimes bands simply find the right combination of people. Everyone has their different piece of the puzzle that makes it just outstanding. Magoach brought just crazy imagination to the guitar. Budgie approached percussion like a painter, working with rhythm instead of colors. Steven Severin provided a steady creative foundation and helped define the band's identity. And of course, there's Siouxsie Sioux, just anchoring it all. They didn't want to create ordinary rock records. They wanted to create worlds, emotional landscapes. And in 1981, all of that ambition came together in an album called Juju. Now, this would become one of the defining records of post-punk. praised for its cohesive atmosphere, and celebrated for the interplay between the band members. Steven Severin later reflected that the group realized they had created something that felt like a concept album almost, with each song contributing to a larger whole rather than standing on its own. But before listeners had a chance to listen to a single note, no one would have guessed hidden among those tracks was a song that Halloween would quietly adopt as one of its own. And like, I'm going to keep saying this, it's not just because the song's called Halloween, right? It's the song itself. Now, every archive has certain objects that seem to possess gravity of their own. You tend to notice them before anyone points them out, and not because they're louder or any reason other than they just quietly draw you closer. Now, when our archive has a listening room, because I'm working on it, like doing all this music stuff is because I love music and I trying to build a really definitive, Halloween archive musically. One of the records in it will definitely be Juju, released in the summer of 1981, which is weird that stuff for Halloween gets released in the summer because, Hocus Pocus, right? This was the fourth studio album from Siouxsie and the Banshees, and nothing about that seems extraordinary. Bands release fourth albums all the time, but many musicians will tell you that something changes around that fourth record. You're not a new band anymore, so that excitement has faded away. The pressure to prove yourself never goes away, but you discover truly who you are, or you spend the rest of your career chasing what you've already done. Siouxsie and the Banshees did not chase what they've already done, for sure. They created an album that Steven Severin would later describe as the point where the band realized they had created something that functioned like a concept album, we said before. But it's because every song belongs in like a bigger story. So it's not a singles culture type reality. They thought of this album as a whole, and it worked. So the album sounds like you're just wandering through a forest, taking different paths. One trail leads toward ancient myths, one towards superstition, one towards dreams, one towards fear, and then one path, you travel down it. It's like that scene in Nightmare Before Christmas where you find the trees, and one of them has Halloween stamped right on it, right? Now, as someone who's listened to a lot of vinyl, one of the things that I try to, for people that didn't grow up in that era, what I try to explain to, I guess younger people, I don't know. I don't want to sound condescending, but an album had to be good and had to be thought out of for two reasons. Number one, you wanted people to listen to the whole thing, right? And most importantly, like, you wanted to put the best tracks and make it, whatever. But number two, each side only had so much space for it's not like a CD where you can make a 2-hour, or CDs are different, but you didn't have very much time on each side. I don't remember the exact number, but you had to think it out and plan it based on, you didn't want to leave too much space on the platter on one side because then, it would end too soon. But then you also didn't want to, organize it in a way that didn't make sense. Now, so you had to have patience, right? As a music listener for vinyl, you have to have patience because, like an 8-track or like anything, you can kind of skip, but not really. You can't skip a track by hitting a button. If you wanted to skip a song on a record, you had to lift the needle up and then drop it kind of where you thought you could get it in the groove, like in the gap, and that didn't always work. Same with an 8-track. 8-tracks you couldn't skip. Cassettes you can't skip. Well, I know too much about technology. So you could skip cassettes at one point. They had this new technology that would find the gap. But for the most part, you didn't really skip cassettes. You didn't really skip anything until CDs were created. So for me, growing up, having to listen to a whole everything, you came to appreciate the thought and the process that it took for these musicians to plan this out. So you wanted to listen to this album multiple times because you also didn't own a lot of them. So think about it this way. Think about your favorite haunted house ever that you've been through, or one that you want to if you haven't. You don't rush yourself through the rooms. You would miss everything that way. I'm notorious for walking really slow in a haunted house, and they kind of get mad at me because I'm trying to take it all in. I don't want to miss anything. I want to see the props. I want to see the details. I want to hear the noises and the sounds, and I want to give these actors their props for having a very limited amount of time to scare me. So I try to pay attention to everything. So albums that are a concept album or whatever, same thought process. You don't want people to just listen. You want them to take it all in as a cohesive overall project. I know that's probably a weird way to describe it, but every track adds another room to explore. It adds another hallway to go down, another strange object to be discovered. You don't want just to go straight to the hit song and then, not listen to anything else. A great album rewards curiosity, and kind of like Halloween, right? So we'll be right back after this quick break. I am Gregory Hallows, your voice behind the Preserve Halloween podcast and founder of the Halloween Preservation Society. Halloween is more than a holiday. It's history, folklore, and a tradition worth protecting. If you love the stories, the research, and the deep dives into Halloween I bring you, please consider supporting the Preserve Halloween podcast. Your support can help me with more research opportunities, including travel to locations relevant to Halloween history, and to bring you even more insight into the world's greatest holiday. Every one of your contributions, no matter the amount, helps keep the jack-o'-lantern glowing just a little bit longer. So support the show if you can, help me preserve the past, and keep Halloween history alive for generations to come. Check the links in the show description to find out more. And thank you. And now, back to the podcast. I don't want to get to Siouxsie Sue yet, because if you know Siouxsie and the Banshees, you know her. But let's get to John McGooch. McGoach. I don't know how you say his name. I'm sorry. But it's McGeoch. McGoach, probably. If you never listened carefully to his work, today is a great time to start, right? Ask any 10 guitarists about influential musicians, and his name will appear at some point. And it's not because he was the fastest or the loudest or he painted with sound or not, maybe nothing extraordinary, but sometimes his guitar sparkled, sometimes it whispered, and sometimes it seemed to echo from beyond the room itself. And on Juju, his playing became one of the album's most defining characteristics. And since that album came out, Johnny Marr, Robert Smith, John Frusciante, Billy Corgan, all have spoken about how he influenced their work. Now, that always tells you something about a musician. Great musicians recognize greatness before the general public generally does. And his playing wasn't flashy. It was architectural. It built atmosphere. Every note he chose was not simply just for the melody. It was for emotion and for texture and for space. And that's what this song Halloween needed. So if you were a musician and you had to write a Halloween song, where would you begin? Would you start out with sound effects? Would you do like a creaking door or a ghost or, a witch laughing or a black cat? That's a lot of the 60s stuff was like that. That's obvious, right? But obvious is not always memorable. Halloween, this song Halloween, does not rely on props. It doesn't need any chains rattling in the background or thunder or, someone laughing maniacally every 30 seconds. They built a feeling with this song, and almost immediately you know where you are. And it's not because the lyrics tell you, it's because the music tells you. The guitar feels cold. The rhythm feels like footsteps. The spaces between the notes are as important as the notes themselves. And it doesn't sound like someone describing Halloween. It sounds like Halloween is arriving. And that is much more difficult to pull off than using, which I love those songs. But not doing those things makes it even harder. So why does this album endure for me and for everyone else that loves it? A lot of albums succeed because they capture the moment, and it's their own moment. And then there's albums that step outside time altogether, and that's where Juju belongs. It reached the top 10 in the UK and earned widespread critical acclaim when it was released, and over the decades continued to appear on lists of essential post-punk recordings. Critics and musicians recognize its lasting influence, but numbers are only part of the story. The real measure of an album's success, to me, isn't where it was charted. It's where if people are still continuing to discover it. So every October, when it's time to do a playlist, someone will hear Juju for the first time because they're searching for Halloween music, or they're trying to, learn more about goth rock, or maybe a friend of theirs recommends it and they finally listen. But however you get to this album, a lot of times the reaction's the same. It's like, why have I never listened to this before? And that's what makes the classic album. It just doesn't get old. It just is sitting there waiting for the next listener and the next generation to discover it. And then, right around the middle of that album, which is awesome, you get to our song, simply called Halloween. So now we've talked about this for a while. We've been building this up. It's finally time to lower the needle and listen to the song. Now, there are songs you hear, and then there are songs you enter. And this is one of those songs. You are entering this song. When the first guitar note emerges from the speakers, nothing rushes towards you. No dramatic orchestral swell, no horror movie screen, no booming narrator, announcing anything. The song just simply opens a door, and not with force, but with invitation. It's like you're standing on the front porch in October. Neighborhood's quiet. The last trick-or-treaters have disappeared. The porch lights are beginning to blink out one by one. But somewhere in the distance, a dog barks. You see a few leaves tumble across the pavement. The air smells of wood smoke. Halloween is not ending. It is just settling in. And that's what this song captures. Not the excitement before the holiday, but the feeling of living inside of it. And one of the things that's, pretty remarkable about the song is that it doesn't explain anything. Many songs tell you exactly what you're supposed to imagine. They mention pumpkins and ghosts and skeletons and vampires and haunted houses. But this song chooses another path. It trusts you as the listener to not have to paint every detail. It simply suggests, or it whispers, like the best ghost stories, right? And it leaves an empty space for you to fill with your own memories, to think about your Halloween. And because no two celebrations of Halloween are the same. And maybe your memories involve a neighborhood filled with maple leaves. Maybe you're like me and your Halloween is warm. That's a understatement. Hot southern evenings where your costume was chosen so you didn't sweat to death, but you still want to look cool. Perhaps your Halloween was under orange streetlights or on a country road where the darkness came early and just completely overwhelmed you. This song makes room for all of that. It never insists there has to be one version of Halloween. It just creates the emotional space where you can rely on your Halloween memories, and they simply appear as you listen to the song. So this is the line that, stands out probably. Maybe not for you, but this is a very apropos line. Trick or treat, the bitter and the sweet. So think about it this way. That's a clever line, right? It's not only poetic, but it basically describes the whole premise of the song. It's not describing candy, it's describing life. And Halloween has always existed between opposites. Children laugh, but they're remembering ghosts. We decorate smiling pumpkins and skeletons. Celebrate the harvest as winter quietly approaches. Trees become more beautiful, but they're also dying and letting go of their leaves. Not dying, but it's the cycle of life. Nothing about October is simple. It's joyful, but also melancholy. It's warm, but also cold. It's comforting, but can be lonely. All at once, all of these things. So that simple phrase, the bitter and the sweet, may be one of the most accurate descriptions of Halloween ever written. Because if you've celebrated enough Halloweens, you realize the holiday carries memories. Some are wonderful, some are painful, but every October reminds us of people who once walked beside us. Homes we don't live in anymore, neighborhoods that have changed completely, friends we've lost, children who've grown up. The holiday teaches us something quietly profound. Beautiful things don't last forever, which is why we celebrate them while they're here. And that's why the song, maybe it becomes more meaningful as we grow older. When I was young, certain songs were just mysterious and, I thought of them a certain way. But as I get older, songs have different meaning now. The lyrics hit a little different. And that's one of the problems you can run into when you write a song about a specific holiday. Sometimes they get trapped in their era. You may hear the production and it dates it. You may hear certain trends being spoken of, or fashions, or, businesses that don't exist. And you know exactly when that song was recorded, which is cool in one way, but listen to Halloween and it has escaped that. Still feels current, and it's not because it sounds modern, it's because it sounds timeless. Some songs are just timeless, and it doesn't matter that it's getting older, because atmosphere doesn't age the way trends do. There's still moonlight, it's still moonlight. Fog is still fog. A lonely October evening still feels the same way as it did in 1981. And this song built itself on emotion and not fashion. And that's why I think listeners continue to discover it decade after decade, generation after generation. And the thing is, this song, Halloween, was never forced onto us. There was no really advertising campaign declaring it was an essential whatever. No radio DJ announced it as an annual classic. Instead, we as Halloween lovers found it. One person played it for somebody else. Collectors shared it. College radio embraced it. Alternative clubs play it. October. We continue to share it. Mixtapes carry it from friend to friend. Playlists, streaming services, online communities. The song spread because people love it. Organically, quietly. These are the traditions that endure the longest because they're shared out of love. Nobody has to remind you when October arrives that you want to hear the song. And a lot of us listen to this all year round, but there are some people that only pull out holiday stuff during the holiday, and that's fine. So how many records like this have become seasonal traditions without the creator ever intending them to? I wonder if Siouxsie and the Banshees knew they were writing a song that all of us Halloween enthusiasts would still be playing almost half a century later. I don't know. I mean, I don't know if musicians have the idea that every song they write is going to be, wonderful or last forever. I'm not sure, but we make that decision as the audience, one October at a time over the decades. And that's what happened here. Halloween has grown to be, part of the season and part of our ritual and part of our soundtrack. Without us looking at the calendar, we can tell by hearing the song our favorite time of the year has arrived. And every archive contains objects that history preserved, and this archive was preserved by the people who kept listening. So there's an old saying that is spread among collectors, some collectors, I don't know if all of them, but you never really own history. Your job is to take care of it until it's time to pass it on. And that's kind of my thought process. Preservation isn't about locking something away so no one can see it. It's about keeping it alive. And one of the ways you do that is by sharing it and getting people to know about it. And that's true whether we talk about a century-old Halloween postcard or a paper decoration or a mask, or in this case, a song. Songs survive differently, though, from other artifacts. A postcard survives because someone puts it in an album. A paper decoration survives because someone carefully takes care of it and puts it away and makes sure it's still there for the next, season. A song survives simply because people play it again and again and again, year after year. And that's what has happened with this song. There is no committee, at least that I know of, that votes songs into the Halloween, canon. There wasn't a meeting that, historians decided, well, this song belongs, even I'm not trying to be the authority on Halloween music. I'm just simply sharing songs I love. But this song earned its place the way traditions do. People loved it and they want to bring it back every October. And that's why it endures. So one of the things that gets, as you get older, gets talked about. And like I said earlier, things kind of just hit different. And holidays are the no different. When I was a child, Halloween was excitement, the costumes and your friends laughing and the pillowcases and parents telling us to come home when the street lights come on. And then we, kind of try to stretch that out as long as possible. Halloween was busy and it was loud and it was joyful. And as you get older, sometimes things become quieter. You notice different sounds. Now you notice an old horror film playing from another room, the ticking of an antique clock, rain against your window, that crackle of vinyl when you lower the needle and play it. And Halloween becomes less about what we're doing and more about how the season feels to us. And that's how songs become more meaningful over time. They're not competing with our memories. They're trying to accompany them. So when this song plays, it's walking beside your memories like an old friend, right? People who truly love Halloween don't celebrate it just for one night. We live with it, but not, in costume or in a character, but in appreciation. We notice when the season's changing. We notice that first pumpkin at the market. We notice that first code orange and celebrate it because we're excited about it. We notice that first orange leaf or the first crow that we see. The first afternoon when the sunlight kind of looks different. Those are all tiny moments that become celebrations all of their own. Now, music has an extraordinary ability to capture a moment in time. A song can remind you of so many different things, good and bad. So long after the decorations are packed away and after the candy has disappeared and after another October has become just a memory, one song can bring all of that back. And that's preservation. It's not so much preserving objects, which I love to do, but it's preserving the feeling associated with those things. Now, as we come to the end of this podcast, I'll ask you this. Every archive spotlight ends with one question. Why does this belong here? Why should future generations care? And the answer isn't because Siouxsie and the Banshees Halloween is famous, and it's not because it was commercially successful or not, and it isn't because so many critics love the album Juju, and all those things are true. I mean, Halloween was not released as a single, though, off this album, so I don't know. But this album has remained one of the defining works of post-punk and continues to influence generations of musicians. But it belongs here because the song has accomplished something rare. It is part of Halloween itself. Not officially by any means, but emotionally. And there's a huge difference. Every October, thousands of people who have never met one another will search and reach for this same recording. Some play it while they're decorating. Others will drive through the neighborhoods looking at lights and Halloween decorations. Some hear it through headphones while the trees are changing colors, leaves. Many of us put it on a carefully curated Halloween playlist that we've been building for years. And each listener experiences something slightly different. Yet somehow, we're all sharing the same tradition. And that's what makes this song important. Traditions aren't always ancient. Sometimes they're only 40 years old. And sometimes they're created without a ceremony. They simply just appear. And one day we realize we can't imagine Halloween without them. And I think that's what happened here. More than 4 decades after Juju first appeared, the story continues. In 2022, Siouxsie assembled an album called All Souls, which I also have a copy of. This was a collection of songs she put together for the autumn season. And one of those songs was Halloween, and she was acknowledging what we had already known for years. This song was inseparable from this time of year. And the audience had already preserved the song, but now Siouxsie herself was recognizing the same thing and rewarding us with more music altogether. And it's a reminder that traditions don't always travel in one direction. Sometimes listeners shape history as much as the people who create it. So if this episode has inspired you to further explore, don't stop with Halloween the song. Take an evening, dim the lights, put your phone away or turn it off, and listen to Juju on vinyl or on whatever you've got. And, streaming it's fine. But make it an event. Listen to the whole album from beginning to end. Don't skip around. Don't treat it like a playlist. Treat it like I said earlier, you're visiting a haunted house, and every room you go into is a different experience. And you'll begin to understand why musicians still talk about this record and fans still talk about this record more than 40 years after it came out. And once you find that song, Halloween, that we all love, don't think of it as the final destination. Think of it as a room where October has been quietly waiting for you all along. So, as I put this record back in its sleeve, put it back on my shelf, it's worth remembering archives aren't built from the loudest voices. They're built from the things that endure, the things people return to, long after trends have faded and long after fashions have changed. Long after the world that created them has disappeared, tonight's record has earned its place. And not because anyone declared it a Halloween classic, but because generations of Halloween lovers quietly made it one. And as long as someone lowers the needle or presses play, each October its story will continue. Thank you for stopping by. I look forward to your next visit. So until next time, stay strange, stay curious, stay spooky, and always preserve Halloween. If you'd like to learn out more or support me in any other way, I do have a Patreon now, so I will put the link to that in the show notes. You can also find out more about the links that I have and other things that I, just been discovering lately. I've been putting a lot of work into the Patreon, and I released the raw file on the Patreon before I release it to the public. So keep an eye out there. You can sign up for 1 free month right now. I'll put a link to that and see what I'm doing. And I'm kind of dipping my toe in everywhere. I've got, Facebook and Instagram and TikTok and this podcast and Patreon now. So, and I will be at Midsummer Scream in August, the 7th. I'll be there the Friday and Saturday. So if you want to, meet up somewhere and we could do like a cool Preserve Halloween, just meet and greet, I'll be walking around wearing one of my 1031 365 shirts, more than likely. So if you see me, say hello. I'd love to meet all of you guys that are listening from all over the world. And I thank you again for preserving Halloween and, understanding what it is I'm trying to accomplish. So thanks again. And until next time, you guys be safe.